NASCAR champion Kyle Busch, his family revealing he died from severe pneumonia that then progressed into sepsis.
At over 180 miles per hour, NASCAR drivers live inches from disaster every second. But nobody imagined Kyle Busch's story would end this way. When Dale Earnhardt Jr. finally revealed details of Kyle Busch's final moments, his words carried the kind of weight that instantly made fans nervous. What he described was not just tragic, it was deeply unsettling. Because hidden inside those final moments was something that many believe the racing world completely missed until it was already too late. The message that broke the internet. Hours after NASCAR announced Kyle Busch's death, Dale Earnhardt Jr. posted a message on X that stopped the entire racing world cold. He did not post a generic rest in peace. He did not post a Bible verse. He told a story that nobody outside of their inner circle had ever heard before, and that story changed how every single fan understood the last chapter of Kyle Busch's life. Dale wrote that he and Kyle had what he called a really challenging existence for many years. And if you followed NASCAR at any point between 2005 and 2017, you already know that is the understatement of the century. These two went at each other on the track, off the track, in interviews, and through the media for the better part of a decade. The Richmond door slam in 2007 alone could fill its own video. And when Rick Hendrick released Kyle from Hendrick Motorsports after the 2007 season specifically to make room for Dale Jr. on the roster, that move added a whole other layer of personal tension between them that quietly followed both drivers around the garage for years after it happened. But here is the part that hit everyone in the chest. Dale revealed that it was Kyle who made the first move to fix things. Not Dale. Kyle walked into Dale's motorhome one day and started a conversation about how they each managed their racing teams. That was the door opener. That was the moment two men who had spent years making each other miserable decided to try something different. Dale wrote that they even did media together to laugh through some of the things they put each other through. And then he dropped the detail that made the whole internet go quiet. He said they had recently been talking about Kyle driving one of Dale's late model cars at North Wilkesboro Speedway this summer. They had a plan to meet up the following Thursday to get Kyle's seat fitted at the Junior Motorsports shop. Kyle was excited about it. Dale said Kyle actually laughed over the idea of his fans and JRM fans having to cheer together for the same driver in the same race. That meeting was supposed to happen on May 29th. Kyle died on May 21st. 8 days short of a handshake that would have been one of the best feel-good stories in NASCAR history. And now you have to sit with the fact that one of the greatest rivalries in modern racing did not end with a dramatic finish line moment or a championship battle. It ended with a text thread about seat fittings and a Thursday appointment that will never be kept. That is how close they were to something special. But Dale's tribute was not the only thing that shook the NASCAR world that week. Because what happened in the 11 days before Kyle's death is a timeline that still does not fully make sense, and it all started with a radio call that nobody thought twice about at the time. The radio call nobody took seriously. On Sunday, May 10th, Kyle Busch was racing the Cup Series event at Watkins Glen International in upstate New York. He was driving the number 8 Chevrolet for Richard Childress Racing, and for the first time all season, his car was actually fast. He was running inside the top 10. He was making moves. He looked like the Kyle Busch that fans remembered from the Joe Gibbs racing days. And then, with a few laps to go, he keyed his radio and said something that would haunt every person who heard it after May 21st. He asked his team to find a specific doctor named Bill Heisel at Ortho, Carolina. He said he needed a shot after the race. His spotter asked if he wanted the doctor at his car or at his motorhome. Kyle said the motorhome. That radio transmission went out live on the Fox Sports broadcast, and Mike Joy explained it to millions of viewers without a hint of concern. Kyle had been fighting a sinus cold all week, and Watkins Glen is a road course with elevation changes and high G-forces that turn any kind of head pressure into pure misery. Sinus cold plus road course equals a tough day. That was the whole story. He finished 8th. Best result of his entire 2026 season. Everyone moved on. But here is what makes that moment land differently now. Bill Heisel is not some random track medic. He is the director of motorsports medicine at Ortho, Carolina, and the most trusted medical provider in the entire NASCAR garage. He has been working with Cup Series teams for over a decade. Drivers do not ask for Bill Heisel by name unless they know exactly who he is and exactly what they need. Kyle knew. And that was also the day his daughter Lennox turned 4 years old, which means while a 4-year-old was blowing out birthday candles at home, her father was at a racetrack 2 states away asking a doctor for help. Kyle finished the race and moved on. 5 days later he would tell reporters he was still not feeling great. But on May 10th, the clock had already started ticking, and the sinus cold that everybody dismissed was about to become something much worse. The last win and the words that haunt everything. On Friday, May 15th, Kyle Busch showed up at Dover Motor Speedway for the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series race and drove like the greatest Truck Series driver who ever lived, because that is exactly what he was. He qualified on pole. He swept both stages. He led 147 of 200 laps. He beat Ty Majeski to the finish line by more than 3 seconds and won his 69th career Truck Series victory, a record that may never be touched. After the race, Fox Sports reporter Amanda Busick asked him why winning never gets old. And Kyle gave an answer that now lives in a completely different universe than the one it was spoken in. He said you take whatever you can get because you never know when the last one is going to be, so cherish them all and trust him on that. He said it with a smile. He said it like a man who had been struggling in Cup for 2.5 years and was just happy to be back in victory lane doing what he loved. Then, in a follow-up press scrum, a reporter asked how many more wins he wanted. Kyle said the same thing again. You never know when the last one is going to be. Twice in the same press session, 6 days before he died, Kyle Busch told the world to cherish every moment because you never know when it ends. I want to be honest with you here. Drivers say stuff like this LL the time. It is the same kind of cliché as giving it 110%. Kyle was not secretly aware of anything. He was just a guy reflecting on the fact that wins do not come as easy as they used to. But context changes everything. And when you watch that interview back now, knowing what happened 6 days later, those words feel like something a screenwriter would reject for being too on the nose. The next day, Saturday, May 16th, Kyle talked to reporters again at Dover and admitted he was still not feeling right. He said the cough from the previous week had been pretty substantial and that he still was not great. Nobody panicked. He had just won a race the night before. Drivers get sick. Drivers race through it. That is the culture. And that culture is part of why what happened next caught everyone completely off guard. The last birthday, the last post, the last Tuesday. On Monday, May 18th, Kyle's son Brexton turned 11 years old. Kyle posted a carousel of photos on Instagram showing Brexton growing up on racetracks and in victory lanes. He wrote that he and Samantha Busch were so proud of who Brexton was turning out to be and that there was no limit to what the kid could accomplish. That post is still up on Kyle's Instagram right now. It was his last social media post ever. 3 days before he died, he was a father celebrating his son's birthday, writing about how proud he was. And think about what Samantha posted that same day. She wrote about watching Brexton become this driven, funny, kind-hearted little man and called it the greatest gift. She said no matter how tall he gets or how fast he drives, he will always be her baby. 3 days later she would lose her husband. Those words were written in joy. They now exist in grief. The next day, Tuesday, May 19th, Kyle and Brexton drove to Durham, North Carolina for the grand opening of an Andretti indoor karting facility. Mario Andretti himself was there telling stories. A man named Naz Idura, who was at the event, later told a local news station that he saw Kyle and Brexton playing arcade games together and bonding in a way that was impossible to miss. He said he did not want to bother them because the moment felt too special. Kyle was laughing. He was present. He was with his son. Mario Andretti would later pull out his phone at Indianapolis Motor Speedway the next day and show reporters a video of Kyle smiling and shaking his hand at that exact event. Andretti called it the shock of his life. He said everybody knew Rowdy and that Kyle would always bring a smile when people talked about him. That was Tuesday. Kyle Busch was smiling at an arcade with his kid and shaking hands with a racing legend. 24 hours later, he would be on a bathroom floor, coughing up blood. The final tragic moments. On Wednesday, May 20th, Kyle Busch drove to the General Motors Charlotte Technical Center in Concord, North Carolina, to do simulator work. This was a completely normal part of his weekly routine. Chevrolet teams like RCR use that facility constantly for engineering and race preparation. There was nothing unusual about Kyle being there on a Wednesday in May. At approximately 5:30 in the evening, someone at that facility called 911. The Cabarrus County Sheriff's Office later released the audio of that call, and what the caller described was not a sinus cold. The caller told the dispatcher that there was an individual experiencing shortness of breath who was very hot and thought he was going to pass out. The caller said the individual was producing blood and coughing up blood. He said the person was on the bathroom floor but was still conscious and awake. The caller repeated 3 times that Kyle was awake. He asked the paramedics to come in without sirens and directed them to a side entrance. Kyle was transported from the Concord facility to a hospital in the Charlotte area. The name of the hospital has never been publicly confirmed. That 911 audio is the single most important piece of public medical evide. NCE in this entire story. It is the only moment where we hear what was actually happening to Kyle Busch's body before he died. Everything else, the sinus cold, the shot at Watkins Glen, the cough at Dover, those were symptoms of something building. The bathroom floor in Concord was the moment it broke through. And by the next morning, the racing world would learn that Kyle Busch was never going to break through anything again. Severe illness and the two words that explain nothing. On Thursday morning, May 21st, a post appeared on Kyle's social media accounts from his family saying he had experienced a severe illness resulting in hospitalization. The statement said he would not compete in any scheduled activities at Charlotte Motor Speedway that weekend. Richard Childress Racing announced Austin Hill as his replacement for the Coca-Cola 600. The statement from RCR said Kyle's number 8 Chevrolet would be ready and waiting for him when he got better. A few hours later, everything changed. A joint statement from the Busch family, Richard Childress Racing, and NASCAR confirmed that Kyle Busch had died. The statement called him a future Hall of Famer, a rare talent, one who comes along once in a generation. It named Samantha, Brexton, Lennox, his parents, and Kurt Busch. It said the entire NASCAR family was heartbroken. And then it gave two words for his cause of death. Severe illness. That is it. No hospital name. No medical condition. No timeline of what turned a man who was playing arcade games on Tuesday into a body in a hospital on Thursday. NASCAR CEO Steve O'Donnell held a press conference the next day at Charlotte Motor Speedway. He called Kyle an American badass. He said Kyle would probably be pretty angry if they did not race this weekend, so they were going to honor his memory by doing what Kyle loved most. When a reporter asked about the cause of death, O'Donnell said they were only 24 hours removed from getting the phone call and that out of respect for the family, he was not going to address specifics. He promised transparency would come in due time. And then O'Donnell shared one last detail that gutted everyone in that room. He said Kyle had texted him on Tuesday, the same day he was at the Andretti event with Brexton. The text said, "Hey man, what do you think about an over 40 rule so I can compete in all the Truck Series races next year?" O'Donnell laughed through tears and said they had actually discussed it in an internal meeting on Wednesday and agreed it was a good idea. That meeting happened while Kyle was collapsing in a building less than 30 minutes away. Richard Childress Racing also announced they would retire the number 8 indefinitely. The statement said Kyle was instrumental in designing that number's look and that no one could carry it forward the way he did. They said the number 8 is reserved for Brexton Busch when he is ready to go NASCAR racing. That decision mirrors exactly what RCR did in 2001 after Dale Earnhardt Jr. died at Daytona, when they parked the number 3 until Austin Dillon was old enough to drive it. The brother who has not spoken. The tributes came from everywhere. Denny Hamlin called Kyle the Kobe Bryant of racing. Brad Keselowski said it was an absolute shock and told people to hug their loved ones. Jimmy Johnson called Kyle one of the most talented drivers he had ever shared a track with. William Byron said Kyle was the best mentor anyone could ask for. Bubba Wallace said his eyes hurt from crying and his heart hurt from pain. Joe Gibbs Racing said their hearts were broken. Rick Hendrick said he watched Kyle grow up in the sport. But there is one person in the entire NASCAR world who has said nothing. Kurt Busch. Kyle's older brother. The man who told reporters in 2001 that his little brother was the best driver in the family. The man whose own career ended in 2023 because of a concussion he could never recover from. The man who was inducted into the NASCAR Hall of Fame in January of 2026, just 4 months before his brother died, with Kyle right there beside him on the red carpet. Kurt's Instagram is silent. His X account is silent. The joint statement from NASCAR named him alongside Samantha, Brexton, and Lennox, but Kurt himself has not found the words yet. And honestly, I do not think anyone can blame him. Because how do you write a post about the kid you told the world was better than you, the kid who proved you right 234 times, the kid who outlived your career by 3 years but did not outlive you? Kyle Busch won his last race on a Friday at Dover. He celebrated his son's birthday on a Monday. He played arcade games with his son,